everyone, this is Nichel Anderson. I'm your host of our podcast show, Nichel Anderson, Short Stories and Beyond. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we're going to have a return back to Atlantis. This is part 8, so I'm very excited about this. It's going to be Atlantis part 8, entitled We Are Amongst the Truth Seekers of Akuni. So thank you so much for joining me today. We're looking at the short story of this family that I created a couple years ago, and I really wanted to kind of focus on the next phase from the last episode that I did for Atlantis, where you have the return of Metum, the people that took him or what have you, they found him and so forth. We're going to talk about it a little bit on the last one on part 7, but we're going to move forward and we're going to cover a couple of things. And I did mention earlier this year in 2022, my podcast show is now monthly. That gives me more time to focus on other projects, which lead me to the NFTs that I'm going to be releasing soon. And do check out any bonuses that I do release. I'll go more in detail about that. That's the Pyramid Mystery Temple Reunion, which is going to be about 10,000 NFTs of pixels. Pyramids, their male and female energy is going to be on the Ethereum blockchain. The mint date is forthcoming. The website is MOLIAEworld.com, so definitely check that out. It's a lot of goodies with that. Of course, they're looking for these swords. There's several of them, and one of them could be connected to King Milan that gave that to Princess Amia, and I talk about that in 2019 before NFTs were even on my radar, and that was the Future series, Nahara and Princess Amia, the Commune of Leadership. And definitely check that out. That was in 2019, so you know it's good. It's meant to be, because I had no idea. I didn't really get into NFTs until about 2022. But anyway, so definitely look up for more information about that, and when we're going to release the mint, and we are going to a token, MOLIAE token. Definitely stay tuned to that. With all that done and said, we're going to go ahead and move on and talk about Atlantis. Right, the last time we did about Atlantis, again, it was where they found Metum and they took away the people that was responsible for. One of them was his wife. So we're going to definitely talk about that today and get into this story here. And without further ado, I do want to mention that my book is available, Mitsrayim, a memoir of a past life in ancient Egypt. Do check that out, and please leave a positive review. And if you already purchased my book, please consider to go. Just take 2 minutes. You know, I do this podcast and I love it, but I really, really would appreciate it if you do take the time to purchase it, to just leave a review that you love it. You know, gotta be positive on that, and I appreciate you. Please check out MOLIAE Beauty. That's our extended brand for MOLIAE. That's MOLIAE. That's MOLIAE beauty.com. It's for men and women, for the king in you, for the queen in you. And it deals with a healthy skin. It's really deep in a sense that it's inside deep, and you'll see the difference. Our main product is that Aqua 360. It's a body oil. You could do so many things with that. But do check that out as well. And we do have our merchandise available on MOLIAE.com with our t-shirts all about love. So let's go ahead and get into this. Atlantis, I really love the whole concept of it, and I like how this is going. I do get some very, very good reviews on it when people are talking about it and they mention it to me, so I'm very excited. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get started in this and get it going. All right, let's do this. And let's begin. For this week on my Season 6 podcast show, Nichel Anderson, Short Stories and Beyond, for 2022 to 2023. For this week, part 8, entitled Atlantis, We Are Amongst the Truth Seekers of Akuni. Opening scene. Deep in the underwaters, what will later be in future generations the Atlantic Ocean of Tamat, then Earth, were of the time of Atlantis, conducting the voting and of the authority that will rule over those responsible for the disappearance of Metum, the older brother of Arinte and Makata, to the far east side, over many currents, just 2,000 kilometers, 7,000 feet down, under major pressures that are unknown to how such could sustain. Yet here they were, over 1,200 occupants from star constellations and of galaxies, for the trial and judgment of those that took Metum of Akuni, later in the future generations of adoption of Samna to Mesopotamia area and many other galaxies of Nasa and Arcturus. For this event, that would change the power structure of Atlantis and the connecting galaxies that are in tune to the energy grid above for balance, will be just. Many live sea animals formed around and could see these people gathering that were unknown to civilians above, because it was a secrecy of location was important for the energy well led to Shambhala, center of their planet, then called Tamat. The dome of accountability was deep brown of copper lining the entrances of starships and sailing and closed vessels docked to enter the large seated dome underwater. Many dignitaries took their seats dressed in their regent clothing and status garb to begin the session that will be the trial of those responsible for the previous disappearance of Metum, including the wife of Metum, Shakawa. At this moment the voting had started, and we see Arinte dressed in his royal garb of fine linen of colors of sea light teal and white, with a gold breastplate and matching wrist jewelry, as his hair rose of those undercurrents of fog. Makata was next to him in her yellow royal dress of fine linen of white layers, making a flowing dominance strap across her right shoulder that draped down as a fitted cape to the floor, with the hair pulled back in the shimmering Nubian curls laced with ribbons of emeralds and sapphires that sparkled with her royal breastplate of dozens and dozens of gemstones and the North Star grid of Tamat. Their parents were seated behind them, 3 feet along with those of the court of royalty and military authority for matters such as this huge important hearing of the deeds of those. Metum was resting above the waters in a secret and protected location as he got better over time, but still not to be present at this, for it was major that his wife would be judged, and the others. With the best herbalist of Atlantis, they was taking care of Metum above. His children by Makata was taken in a separate hidden location as the masses of their mother was being accountable for at this time. We see a round platform in the far right instead of a stage with a round golden circle drawn as Arinte and Makata stand on it, surrounded by many of faces of authority and rule, all over watching them and taking a vote. The beam from a spew with a direct access to this location deep in the sea was let in, and it for some reason beamed on the twins. Sounds of gravels and echo to the voting of power rang loud in the dome. Then we heard the sounds of it clearly. I, Inaki, and the Akuni member pleading said, I, an Orion diplomat, not of those of Mitsrayim, but a young seed of them was present. I, an Atlantean, spoke that knew of the Metum realm region of intergalactic importance, and what was done was unjust. I, a Bohushian from the star constellation of Eta, not known for many. I, a Shunan from those of unknown, what would be in the future generations, Saturn. Acobi set the graver down hard and loud. I, that is a vote for sanity of the deeds against my son, Metum. It is not before us at this moment, but is resting above. And let us cast to whom it will be that speaks of this, the light flicker of the names of which, who it will be, and the voting started again. And one by one we hear the sounds of the one and the voting of, by saying, I. There were an echo of sounds voting, when suddenly a loud commotion from the other end of the dome of the entrance. It was Shakawa boldly, with pride bouncing around her to continue to walk with all of that arrogance and a co-opted rhythm to her liking, grinning with her, walking in dressed with layers of brimstone-colored fabric to a dress belted down of a hollow crimson color as she waved her hands, exposing large bracelets decorated with sets of gemstones, as her large breastplate held down with ropes of gold to her wrists. Nestled just inches from her chin, she had the determination of an elder, yet not at that age that we all present knew. Her hair was pulled back to showcase her wielding crown on top as the wife of Metum. There were guards around her, but she brushed them aside, not wanting to wait to be announced for her jury before the Akuni and others of Atlantis Authority Council. They must listen to her now, for the deeds brought against her were of Metum, and she will not have that. She will not be responsible for what others thought of her. Arinte and Makata was the youngest of the children of Acobi, but Tekoa, her eyes pierced through all of that, and she wanted her voice to be heard. She stood in shock as they would not seem to let her speak. Acobi raised his hand to let her. She continued to charge ahead to the platform of her knees, which was those that allowed to speak shall do so. Acobi said, "You wish to be on record to intervene in the voting measure phase." She screamed, "Yes, I am." And proudly, she walked back and forth. "I am the wife, and I'm not." The genie, the wife of Acobi, immediately reached for his arm and hand as he sat on the throne, not looking at everyone else, but just at the disgrace that she had, the arrogance to say such a thing. The genie wanted to calm down Acobi, and that's what she did. Guards immediately repositioned around them, went more particularly of the royal family and his wife of Acobi. He was just 3 feet away. Arinte and Makata was more up front, standing on their platform. They didn't budge or flinch. They just watched the spectacle of the arrogance of Acobi. She stared all of them down, even the ones that were sitting far away, and she waved her hands in disbelief. Is this really going to happen? Am I going to be judged when I'm the wife? Surely this is not so. She turned around and looked at everyone, one by one. Makata stared her down without flinching, and Shakal let her stare. Said, "I am the wife of Metum, and thus a queen of the region that abides the laws of Atlantis, to do as I will for seeking his whereabouts. And I did that. Therefore I am entitled to no hearing of my deeds, least by anyone but the king and queen of Atlantis and beyond." Chakotay family nodded. They would also enter a few moments after she did, and they sat down in agreement. Chakotay continued to speak. "Was it not I that ruled over regions that account for those, not of Tamat, but far? I stand with reason." Makata spoke with clarity and with force. "You have no reason to speak as though you are in control. Your deeds have spoken more so than anything else against my older brother. There is no position of your right before us on this matter." Chakotay started waving her hands in protest as she screamed at Makata. It was Makata that did not flinch, and cutting again, but Chakotay's rage will not justify it to go further. Makata spoke. "Kronos and those of Naya have the deeds record of the talks to those against the royal family and the benignant goddess." Chakotay froze for a moment, but quickly hid truth that seemed remove the pride that was dancing around her to continue in that arrogant stance. So she started to pace back and forth, and then started screaming to silence Makata what she was saying, so that no one else could hear the truth. She stood in the center of the platform, but below them was water into the abyss. And as they stood on each other's side, Shaketa continued to say, "No, it is not so. It is not so," waving her hands, that she deserved an opportunity to speak on her behalf and what she knows to be true, that she has nothing to do with what they're claiming of her husband Metum. Makata continued to say, "Never will we stand here and listen to your claim of innocence. And that is enough." Makata, within moments, raised her hand and she pulled out of divinity, and in that was the power that she removed Shaketa, queen breastplate. It started to shake and move back and forth, and it ripped right off of Shaketa in down to the abyss. Then Makata raised her other hand, and the jewelry that she had remaining from her ears and from her wrists, Makata ripped that away as well. Shaketa, continued. Shakawa was horrified and scared. Her family stood up in panic. No. Makata continued to rip the jewelry off of Shaketa, to strip, and then the crown. She raised her hand, and that crown rose and was ripped off Shaketa into the abyss. Makata then spoke. "You have no power. You are of those that plotted against my brother Metum. We voted who will be the authority to rule of your fate. It will be now." Makata abruptly turned to walk down the pathway to the vortex sea through doorway exit of another platform opposite to where Shaketa was taken to stand. As guards to Shaketa that started to jump up and down and around with the initial pride that she had was no more. Took her to the other side of that pathway to the platform of the loading dock to the dome exit leading to the lagoon. Her once arrogance of entitlement fled out the same way as it opened up of the changing energy current around her and the whole dome of galactical leaders that turned to face and watch Makata. Makata turned with a stern facial expression as her royal long dress flowed around her within the Nubian blue-green waters outside of the glass dome of them. Her brother, Arinte, close behind her now, and with guards. Suddenly, an underwater current that everyone felt and saw brushed up outside of the dome. It was the beaming Apsu that beamed spotlight on Makata as the podium as she stood. It seemed to echo everything that was going on, of the authority being presented to them, of the judgment of Shaketa of Shakawa. With the once contained emotion, Makata looked as though all of what she knew was brought forth of her position to speak as the silence filled the room of the dome and the leaders slowly stood up, all of them at this point, to hear what Makata was saying. And Makata spoke. My name is Makata. I am the order of thee, voted in amongst the leaders of the sea righteousness here, from eclipse attuned to the now. You have no power to speak. You have been judged as those voices were recorded in the sea for us to know your deeds against my brother Metum. Makata stretched her arm to stretch out her hand towards the sea waters that moved around them in an upright position behind Shaketa, to open up the vortex of the black hole Olim as it immediately started to shook the platform for which she stood. Now all eyes were on Makata, Everyone was still standing up in the dome in silence as sounds of the sea around them are waiting to pause when Makata speaks. Thus, the power invested in me from Atlantis, world family of Akuni of Pleiadians, those constellations of 10 remnants, ancestors of ancient Samna, I hereby give the vote of judgment. You are banished from Atlantis and beyond. I are saved. In sync.